And what we're interested here is two evaluation metrics. One is the error on our prediction. How close did we get to the actual PB time that they ran? And number two, how similar was the recommended race plan, these 5K splits, to the actual race plan that they ran. Here's some summary results for the KNN approach, which I've just described, linear regression, elastic nets. You can see here error rates. So we're able to predict for male runners, on average, we get about 5% error. So we're able to predict their PB time within about 5%. For female runners, we're able to do a bit better. And we're able to produce recommended race plans that are over 90% similar. So they're very similar to the paces they actually ran those PB races with. It's interesting to see how those errors and similarities vary with ability. So here we have finish time. So when we look at really fast runners, like 180 minutes, 3-hour finishers, we're able to predict, for men in blue there, we're able to predict their PB time within about 4% accuracy, for women within about 3% accuracy. For less able runners, slower runners, the error rate starts to creep up. Interesting that men are less predictable than women, and this is borne out by the sports science literature as well. Women tend to run more consistently paced races. Men tend to be all over the place, to be perfectly honest. You know, not surprised, going for it and then suffering towards the end of the race. So it's likely that that's what makes the error on male predictions higher than the error on female predictions. You can also see here that similarity, the race plan similarity is very high, tends to fall off a little bit, but still above 90%, even for the slowest runners. Another thing that we were interested in is figuring out, are we able to predict when someone is going to make a really big improvement on their PB time? So this is what we mean by PB difference. Here we have people who are improving their PB time by 12% or 16%, which is really quite a lot in the marathon. And you can see that we do best at predicting PB improvements that are around about 8%. That's the average personal best improvement in the data set. For larger PB improvements or smaller PB improvements, the error rate is higher. We do less well at predicting those improvements accurately. Similarly, the similarity on the race plan is slightly lower for large improvements or very small improvements. So to finish off, the summary so far is that we're able to make predictions, reasonably accurate predictions, and a couple of caveats to that, and we're able to make reasonably accurate race plan recommendations. And we've done this really with very minimal feature engineering. All we have is the gender of the runner, the year of the race, their finish time, and these 5K split times. So pretty minimal, and we're only capturing their race history in terms of one other race. These cases only contain one other race in them. And just to give you a sense of where we're going with this, and this is active work at the moment, so it's not complete as yet, so it's a bit preliminary, but we've looked at more sophisticated feature engineering. So instead of just focusing on, for example, their most recent race, one single race, we might also look at other races in their race history, especially if they've run more than 2 or 3 races. We might look at their least recent race, in other words, their oldest race. We might look at their worst race. We might also consider their most varied race, the race where they had most variation in their pace, or their least varied race, the race where they had least variation in their pace. So in other words, we can greatly enrich these training cases with additional features. And you won't be able to read this, but suffice it to say, here we've looked at 32 different combinations of races. Each one of these races brings another set of features to the representation. It brings another set of 5K splits, another finish time, etc., etc. So here we have MR, single most recent race, all the way down to here where we have MR, LR, the least recent race, their average race, the least varied race, the most varied race, their personal worst race. Lots of races in that representation. And what I want you to take from this is, in general, as we add more features, the error rate, that's what this is measuring on the y-axis, is going down, but not monotonically. Sometimes when you add more features, like over here, it gets worse. So not all of these races are good predictors of PB times. One of the interesting things that does happen for the good sets of features, so here we're comparing the results I've just presented with minimal feature set, just the most recent set race, and a maximal feature set where we're using 6 different races, or up to 6 different races in their representation. The nice thing is that where before we saw that the error was increasing for slower runners, if you remember, so that's the red, the pink bars there, male and female, error rate is going up as finish time goes up. That's not ideal because really it's these slower runners that probably need more help. But when we add in these additional features, you can see that the error rate is flat across all those finish times. So we're able to get more accurate and more stable personal best predictions regardless of runner ability, and without any loss in race plan similarity. So the quality of the race plans is still good. And the same when we look at the relationship between error and PB difference. Before we saw that for races where the user or the runner achieved a really big PB improvement, then our error rate wasn't great. We weren't able to predict that very well. Now we can. We're well less than 5% prediction error. And again, no real loss in the quality of the race plan. So I'll leave it at that. Suffice it to say, at this point, we can say that we're able to make really quite accurate predictions for personal best times, less than 5% across all levels of ability. And this leads into a number of interesting opportunities. Obviously, building that technology into marathon websites or training programs or training apps would be interesting, especially if it allows us to do live user trials. But really, this is just part of a larger research effort, and we'll start to look at applying similar techniques to a whole host of other application areas, personalized training programs, injury prevention, things like that. So, thanks for your attention. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. It was a very interesting talk. So I have 2 questions. How would you know that something is personal best or not best? In the sense that if you feed back your personal best into the system, I assume at the end, if you do that over the year, you're going to end up to different categories of runners.
So we don't know a true personal best. All we know is, based on the data we've seen about this runner, this is their fastest race. They may have run other marathons that aren't in our data set.
No, I know, but a new person comes in and gives you 3 profiles.
Yeah.
How do you know they haven't achieved their personal best yet? In the sense that you give them a profile and they run it.
Yeah.
Then next year, this is either the best profile based on the recommendation system, or if you feed back into the recommendation system, it's going to give another best to them.
It will, So
at the end of the day, so if you do that year over the year,
they
what
eventually
happens?
slow down, right?
Yeah.
So eventually people will slow down.
By recommendation system also?
It'll be, I don't know is the short answer to that. We haven't been able to test whether or not this type of approach recognizes when someone has likely achieved their personal best. It will be another interesting machine learning task to do. I think it probably is there. Certainly within the data, you can see the race profile of people. You can see that in their 20s and 30s, they tend to speed up. They get their best race somewhere in their 40s on average. Great news for people like me. I'm past it now, though, I think. And then they slow down. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question I had was that,
You forgot, okay.
Yeah.
If you want to go ahead and ask, any other questions?
Did you take in consideration the weather conditions as well?
No, we didn't. That would be a good thing to do. So,
because in summer and in winter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. To a large extent, a lot of these races, because they're in the same location, you can kind of expect weather to be somewhat similar Although there's a few outliers. There was one year in Chicago, for example, where I believe the race had to be cut short because it was too hot. But we don't take that into account. It would be relatively easy to do that, add those in as features as well. Yeah.
Okay, time for one more question. Do you want to ask your second question? Okay.
Sorry. So 4% means 4 minutes, right? About 3-4 minutes.
No, well, 4% of, they might be running 240 minutes. So,
which then you went,
so it could be 8 to 10
to
minutes.
8%.
Yeah.
So it's about 4 to 10. I want to see the variability of someone over their career.
Yeah.
In the sense that how much, if you don't do any recommended,
Yeah.
any change. So
Yeah,
in the sense that if you run 2 hours and 20 minutes and then the next year the best is 2 hours 15 minutes,
Yeah.
that's about 4 minutes, 4%.
Yeah. That's the sort of thing that you find. But
So what is the baseline essentially?
It depends. Most people, depends on how long they've been running for. If someone has been running for 20 years, you can see huge improvement over that span of time. If someone's only running for 2 or 3 years, you might see very little improvement. It varies because some people have really bad races.
So
some
it's
years
more than
as well.
4%.
Yeah. Oh, it would be more than 4, yeah. Over a lifetime, yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone, and let's give Barry a big round of applause.
So we're just going to take 5 minutes if you need to go to the bathroom, perhaps get another beer or another drink. Go on ahead, now's a good time while we're switching between the speakers. There's just a few things that I would like to announce. So on the 7th of October, there's a event called 404, and it's basically like a meta meetup where all of the meetups in Dublin are going to be under the same roof. And there's also going to be some great speakers there. Tickets themselves are €25, but if you use the discount code of PyData, you get 10% off. So there's also going to be a conference, a PyData conference in Warsaw, taking place between the 19th and 20th of October. And some of you may recognize the speakers there, some of the keynotes. But one of the things that I think might be of interest to some of the people here is that they offer diversity scholarships. And if you go to the PyData main page, you'll see that you can apply for a diversity ticket to attend and also a travel scholarship. So it's definitely worth looking into. I know it's in a month's time, but it's plenty of time to kind of book flights and tickets to Warsaw. And then finally, I'm interested in sort of organizing lightning talks as a part of our meetup. So today we have 2 half-an-hour talks including questions, but one thing that I think would be quite interesting so that we get to know these projects and libraries and resources a bit better is if somebody has experience, say, with PyTables. Okay, I'm going to hold my hand up and say I haven't actually used it before. And so for someone like me, I would love like a 5-minute lightning talk, say in the time that we have now, where someone just says, okay, I use PyTables, this is how I use it, or this is when to use it. So like people know if it suits the problem that they have, they know where to go to. So, okay, say for Jupyter, I'd say the majority of people know why to use Jupyter or Matplotlib, or if not, it would be nice just to have 5 minutes to say, this is what it's useful for, so you know in future. I'm open to somebody raising their hand now and volunteering, but I realize that's putting you on the spot. So if you want to contact us via Twitter or via the Meetup page, that would be great if you're interested and you'd be happy to give like a 5-minute talk on one of them. Otherwise, our next talk is by Dr. Derek Green. And I seem to be doing an appalling job of introducing our speakers, and I'm very sorry about that. But his research interests are in topic modeling, and his next talk, he's basically a pioneer in the area. He's created some amazing techniques, and for instance, one of them is dynamic NMF. But he's going to be talking about 2 of the main approaches in topic modeling, LDA and NMF, and running through how you might want to implement them and process your code with. But give us 2 seconds, we're going to switch laptops because I'm running ahead of myself. actually, also another question I was thinking is, how do people feel about having 2 talks? Do people want more than 2 talks? Or are 2 talks a good, are they good in the evenings? I feel like we're going to be tired after a long work day, and hence for me, I'm saying 2 talks, but I know that traditionally, meetups have had 3 talks. Is there anyone particularly feels strongly about this? No?
More talks, more pizza.
More pizza, I mean, that's a fair enough thing. But fair enough, actually, and a big shout out to Workday. I mean, absolutely amazing venue, so thanks a million. And if anyone would like to talk to Stephanie, she's over here. They have opportunities across the board, lots of jobs going, so if you're looking for a job, there's plenty in Workday, data science, software engineers, and yeah, and Stephanie's lovely, you should definitely say hi. You want to use that? Yeah. Okay, so let's give a warm welcome to Derek Green.
Great, so thanks very much, Siobhan, for inviting me along, and thanks very much to Workday and Stephanie for hosting us. It's never very easy to follow on from a talk by Barry, but I'll do my best. I guess I'm going to do something that's more tutorial oriented, and it's going to cover the area of topic modeling in machine learning. I'll briefly talk about how you can I'll briefly talk about scikit-learn that some of you may be familiar with. I'll give an overview of topic modeling, and then I'll kind of give some background information around how you might process text data for those of you who aren't familiar with that. The main focus of my talk will be on an approach for topic modeling called non-negative matrix factorization, NMF, and I'll give some details of how that can be used in scikit-learn. And I'll finish off with some practical issues and some lessons that I've learned over the last couple of years. Just to say that the code and the data and slides are online. There are a couple of IPython notebooks to go with this material. I won't go through the notebooks during the talk, but all of this material is covered in more detail on those notebooks. So very briefly, for those of you who aren't familiar with scikit-learn, it's the de facto standard machine learning library for Python. It has a wealth of features in terms of algorithms, evaluation measures, and so on. It really, 10 years ago, if you were interested in machine learning, you spent a lot of time writing code to implement baseline algorithms, writing code to evaluate your algorithms, doing this from scratch. Maybe you were in a large research lab and you could share code, but there was nothing like scikit-learn. So people who are starting their PhD or who are using open source Python libraries today are very lucky in that sense. And it's available through pip or through Anaconda. So just kind of giving you some background about topic modeling if you haven't come across it before. Topic modeling, basically what it tries to do is to automatically discover the hidden thematic structure in a large corpus or collection of text documents. And here's an article from The Guardian on Monday, which relates to an issue that you could argue broaches both politics and sport. And it's a good example for topic modeling because you could say that, well, maybe part of this document relates to basketball, because it's got things like basketball, LeBron James, NBA, and so on. It's got those words and those terms in it. Similarly, it's a little bit about American football as well. It's got the term NFL, it's got the phrase American football, but also clearly there's a political angle to this document. It also mentions Hillary Clinton, Trump, presidential election, and so on. So the idea might be that this kind of document is composed of terms related to several different topics, and we'd like to try and discover those topics across thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of documents. So, unlike if you're familiar with text classification, topic modeling is what we call an unsupervised machine learning technique. So we've got an unstructured corpus of documents, so it's not marked up with XML or JSON or anything like that. There's no prior annotation or training data. We're just trying to explore the data to find out what's in this collection of documents. So the idea is that we have our input, we'll apply some standard text preprocessing techniques, we'll apply a topic modeling algorithm, and then hopefully we'll produce k different topics at the end that gives a sense of what's in this particular collection of documents. The output typically of these types of algorithms are k different topics, and each of these has two things. It has a topic descriptor, which is the set of most relevant terms that can give you a sense of what each topic is about, and then it gives you some associations between the documents in your collection or your corpus and each of the topics. So what are the most relevant topics or documents for each of those topics? So, in terms of what a topic descriptor might look like, you could use a word cloud to represent it. So you might get a sense that, by looking at the topic 1 here, okay, this is about fashion. Topic 2, this is about, food and cooking. Topic 3, it must be about music. And topic 4, movie and films. So the descriptors give you a sense of what this topic is about. And then the associations between the documents and the topics, give you the actual concrete examples of how the topic originated from your collection. And like I said, potentially documents can be related to more than one topic. So on the left, maybe that's both politics and health. On the right, maybe that's both business or sport. Unlike many classical sort of unsupervised clustering techniques, say like k-means, we're not forced into a decision where we say this on the left has to be health, or this document on the right has to be sport. It can be part of each of those topics. So I'll give some examples of topic modeling where it's applied. The example that I use in the IPython notebooks associated with this talk are related to news articles. So you might be interested, given a large collection of news articles, trying to uncover what are the major stories, what are the major subjects or individuals that are covered by these news articles. So, the set of articles that I use for this example is a collection of articles from The Guardian, and the type of topics that you uncover might be something like this. Topic 1, where we see the top words clearly related to Brexit. The top articles, the headlines of those articles, again, reflect the fact that this topic is related to Brexit. Similarly, this was data collection in 2016, so one of the primary topics covered in the collection would be the 2016 US presidential election. So, for topic 2, you've got words like Trump, Clinton obviously appearing frequently, and then you've got these articles here that are related to that topic. So these are examples of the kinds of things that a topic modeling algorithm will pick out of a collection of documents. Like I said, there's no human annotation. We don't need to tell the algorithm what an article about Brexit looks like, what an article about the presidential election looks like. These are sort of emergent from the data. Another example that we've looked at, looking at topic modeling tweets. So we've got now short messages rather than full articles. And we did this experiment where we were looking at over 4 million tweets from 1,200 prominent accounts. And say, for example, things that come out would be topics, say, related to space travel. So here, NASA is very prominent in that particular topic. We've got sort of health and well-being, and then also technology, in this case dominated by Apple. One thing to note with tweets is that obviously you've got very short texts. That can be challenging for topic modeling. So you can aggregate tweets from the same user together to build sort of longer documents that might give you a greater level of success. Another application area that we apply topic modeling in is looking at political speeches. So again, different from news articles, different from tweets. You've got comparatively short speeches, but you've got formal language and terminology. So when an MEP makes a speech in the European Parliament, it looks something a bit like this. It's only a couple of paragraphs long because they're given a very limited amount of speaking time, and typically they tend to focus in on whatever the issue is that they want to get across, because they don't get a lot of speaking time. So we looked at a corpus of around 400,000 speeches from 15 years and looked at the sort of topics that appear over time. So you get topics obviously in the last 15 years related to the financial crash, the Eurozone debt crisis and so on. And if you do this over time, you can kind of see how these topics change over time and how this reflects the sort of the agenda and the priority of the politicians in the European Parliament. Topic models can be applied to other things, not just text, although they're usually applied to text,